being quote unquote good at something just isn't enough anymore, especially if you're a sub 5 man. There's this myth I think a lot of guys believe in that says if you want to be attractive to women, then you should try to get good at something. Focus in on one particular skill and get really good at it, and women will be attracted to you because of how impressive you are, because you've got a skill. You're really skilled at something, you're talented. And people say this about careers too. I've been hearing that my whole life, that as long as you make sure you're really good, you're really skilled at one in demand skill, then you're pretty much guaranteed job security. And maybe that used to be true, but it's definitely not true now. And it's not true that women will be attracted to you just because you're really good at something. And I know that firsthand. Believe it or not, I am actually pretty good at a few different things, okay? I have skills. I have skills that should theoretically make it easy for me to get a job. And I have skills that, if you believe all the normies on Reddit and YouTube comment sections, I should be seen as attractive by at least some subset of women. But I don't have a job. I can't even manage to land an interview. And as far as I can tell, women must not find me attractive because they sure as hell don't treat me like I'm attractive. I think in the past it might have been more worth it to put in the work to get really good at something. That might used to get you noticed. And I'll go into a little more detail on that in a minute, but nowadays it really just doesn't matter how talented you are. And I'm just talking about trying to attract women here. If you enjoy doing something for its own sake, like you just really like drawing or something, whatever it is, if it's just something that, doing it makes you happy, and it's just a way for you to spend your time without thinking of how shitty your life is, then I'm not saying you should quit. I'm not saying you should quit your hobbies, keep doing the things that you enjoy doing. But the thing you got to realize is that getting really good at drawing or whatever other hobbies you have, unless you're like elite level, like top 1% in the world at least, probably even better than that, but we'll just say top 1% in the world at least. If you're not at that level, then women are not going to be impressed by your skills. Sure, a woman might see some of your artwork, or she might see you doing some difficult skateboard trick or whatever, and she might recognize that what you're doing is difficult to do, but it's not going to change how she sees you in terms of attractiveness. Now, I will say that if you are already attractive, in that case, being good at something might be a bonus, but if you are currently having no success with women whatsoever, don't think that going monk mode and getting really good at guitar or something like that is just going to suddenly fix the problem. It's not going to help at all. It might be a good way to pass the time. It might be something fun to do when you're bored. So again, I'm not saying you should just give up on anything if it's something you enjoy doing, but if you actually want to impress a woman with your skills in 2026 and beyond in a way that's actually going to make women think, maybe he's not so bad. Maybe I do want to staple his documents. If that's what you want, then you pretty much have to be professional level, okay? You got to be elite at whatever it is. So for example, if skateboarding is your thing, then you have to be damn near Tony Hawk before your skills are good enough to actually get you laid. Or not even like in terms of getting laid, but to even get you noticed by a woman, like just to get noticed. And just to be clear, I know there's a lot of chicks out there that'll say that they think skateboarders are hot. There's a lot of skateboard groupie girls out there. Just using skateboarding as an example. I'm not a skateboarder myself, but that's an example. You could say the same thing about any hobby, pretty much, like guitar or basketball or whatever. There's always a group of women out there that will say that they are attracted to men that are skilled in that particular hobby. But what you have to realize is they're only thinking about guys that were already good looking, okay? They're not saying that just any guy that's good at skateboarding is hot. They're saying that a hot guy that's good at skateboarding is extra hot. I guarantee if I went down to the local skate park today and I did a 540 backside triple can-can McTwist right in front of a group of skateboard groupie chicks, they wouldn't even notice me. I mean, they might notice, they might notice that some ugly guy did a cool trick in front of them, but they'd just be thinking, wow, that ugly guy did a trick. They're not going to be sitting there wishing that I'd approached them. I'm not attractive. I'm not attractive, so it doesn't matter. However talented I may be, even if it should be impressive, you got to remember, we're living in the age of the internet, the age of social media. Everybody in modern society, and especially women, I mean, it's men too, but I think, especially women, everybody's living their lives through social media. Pretty much people's social lives, the media people consume, it's all online, okay? It's all virtual. People aren't actually going outside that much and experiencing life for what it is. And even when people do go out, they got their phone with them. They're looking at their phone while they're sitting at the dinner table. They'll be at dinner with their family and friends or whatever. They'll be at the bar at a night out. Chicks will be in the club. They'll go to the club on their girls' night or whatever, but then they're all just standing against the wall looking at their phones, looking at social media, looking at Instagram, Snapchat, or whatever they're looking at. TikTok, I guess, is the thing now. Okay, so we're living in the social media age. So, however good I might be at something, unless I'm literally so good that I'm one of the best at it in the whole world, nobody's going to really be impressed because they've probably already seen way more impressive people online on social media. But I do think it used to be different. Before social media rotted everybody's brains, it actually might have been a viable strategy for an unattractive man to just get really good at something to try to attract women in that certain niche. I think back then it probably did work back in the day. Because back then, yeah, people were still aware that more talented men existed. Let's use guitar, for example. I think back in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, everybody was aware of famous guitar players, like say Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton. Everybody knew these guys existed, but it didn't matter as much. Women would still be really impressed, even if you were like only half as good as Eric Clapton. Or let's say if you were like in the top 25% of guitar players in your local area, that probably would have been enough to get you some attention from women back in the day. Because sure, they would have known about all of the much more talented guitarists from TV and radio, but it wouldn't have been in their face in 4K super HD quality video 24/7, 365. They wouldn't be just sitting there with their phone in their pocket and then all of a sudden hear a bling bling, a little notification, and then they look at their phone and it's just some hot, super talented guy just shredding on guitar. People these days actually live their lives online to the point that it's like the media people consume is just so present and ubiquitous in their lives that it actually feels real. To a woman living today that's really into a certain niche hobby, let's just stick with the guitar example. For a woman living today that's really into, say, some subgenre of rock or whatever, and she has a thing for guitarists, she's going to be consuming so much content around that on social media that essentially what's happening is she's desensitizing herself. So it used to be good enough to just be one of the best in your local area. But nowadays, you got to be one of the best, period, if you want anybody to actually be impressed, because everybody's desensitized to it. Okay? She's seeing high def video of all these more talented guitar players. Like she can easily see and possibly even communicate with online in an instant with guitar players from all over the world. So you're not just competing with all the other guys in your county or even just all the other guys in your state. You know, it's global. Everybody's global now. And on top of that, your local area is just bigger now. The world is more connected. You know, sure, motor vehicles and highways and public transportation and all that, it's existed for a long time now. So it's not that people today have that much more capability these days to physically meet up with people in a larger radius. But because of social media and online dating, where you can view all your potential matches sorted by distance, you know, you can view people in a 50-mile radius, a 100-mile radius, or even more, and you can very easily communicate with these people, no matter how far away they are. You know, communication is pretty much instant. You know, 30 years ago, people just didn't really even consider trying to meet people 50 miles away. I'm sure it happened, but it was rare. But nowadays, 50 miles doesn't even really seem like a long distance at all for a relationship. Most would probably agree it's not ideal, but it's close enough that you could probably manage to meet up at least once or twice a week, and you can very easily stay in touch throughout the day, all day, every day. You don't have to physically be next to a landline in order to talk to your long-distance sweetheart. You can do a video call pretty much anytime, anywhere. I mean, a man and a woman could be 1,000 miles away from each other, and they could both be on the clock at their 9-to-5 jobs, but they can still very easily just both take a supposed bathroom break and then FaceTime real quick and look at each other's private parts in real time in the middle of the workday. And moving away from home for work is already pretty much the norm these days. So it's less complicated to move to be closer to someone if you have to. So people are just more willing to enter into a long distance relationship with someone that's even like 100 miles away from them. So women are looking online, you know. It's just what I'm trying to say. It was a lot easier back in the day to be one of the best guitarists or whatever, you know, replace guitarist with any hobby you want, one of the best skateboarders, one of the best baseball players. It was easier back in the day to be one of the best in your local area and to be seen by women in your local area as being very talented and highly skilled. That used to be something that was achievable. And that used to be good enough. But there's just a lot more competition now. A whole lot more. So just being really good at something is not even close to enough to increase your chances with women in the present day. You have to be elite. Now, with everything I've been saying so far, there are some caveats I want to mention. So I think for younger guys, like if you're still in high school, for example, I think in some cases, you might still be able to use your skills to get chicks as an unattractive guy without being elite. But you do still have to be like top 3% in your local area, probably more like top 1%. And this only works for skills that are considered highly attractive. Like, for example, if you're an unattractive guy, but you're good enough at football to be one of the best on your high school team, that might be enough to help you get a girlfriend. It might be enough. If your team sucks and you lose all your games, then I don't think anybody's going to be impressed in that case. Because the girls at your school could probably just as easily date guys from other schools. So you need to be one of the best players in your whole county or district or whatever for your talents, not just in your school. You have to be one of the best in like the whole wider area for your talents to actually increase your SMV. But generally speaking, I do think that girls at that age, they tend to have less ability to use online dating and everything, and they just have smaller social circles in general. So maybe just being good at sports might be enough to impress the girls at your school, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time thinking of an example of an athlete that is sub 5. Most guys that are good at sports also tend to be better looking, I think. The only exceptions would be like a really fat offensive lineman, I guess, but that doesn't really count. Nobody really cares about offensive linemen, even if they are elite. And I don't know why I'm saying this anyways. If you're that young that anything I said in the past couple minutes actually applies to you, then please click off the video now and unsubscribe from my channel. This content is meant for adults only, okay? So you shouldn't even be watching this. But yeah, it really sucks that you can be really good at something, or you could even be elite level talent at several things. But if none of those things are seen as attractive by broader society, then nobody's going to care. Like if you're one of the best in the world at, I don't know, competitive yo-yo or something, that should be impressive. I'm sure it takes a ton of practice and a lot of innate talent to get to that level. But I'm pretty sure the world champion of yo-yo isn't pulling any chicks from his accolades. Unless he's already good looking, because in that case it'd probably be a bonus, but women don't care if you're really good at yo-yo. Take DBDR for example. Most of you probably know who DBDR is if you're watching my channel, but if you don't, he's just another YouTuber. He makes videos kind of similar to mine. Well, he's really good at music production. I wouldn't say he's elite level, but you can listen to his music on his channel, Saint DBDR. It's not really my style of music, but you can tell he's obviously very talented at music production. And he's mentioned before how people he's met in real life have given him compliments on his music, but it doesn't seem like it's helped him any with women, like it hasn't helped him at all. And of course it hasn't. He is probably like top 10% in terms of talent and skill out of all music producers in the world, but that's not enough. Top 10% is not even close to good enough to be considered impressive these days. Now, in my case, I don't think I'm top 10% in anything, but I do have some skills. I can do audio editing and video editing better than most people. I can do motion graphics with After Effects pretty good. I'm pretty good at that. Like theoretically, I would say I'm actually good enough at video editing to get a job doing it, I think, just based on what I've seen from professional video production companies, like Vox or whatever. But I don't think anybody would hire me. I'm good at it, but there's enough other people that are just as good. I'm pretty sure there's more people with video editing skills than there are jobs to go around. And by the way, don't use anything on this channel as a gauge for how good my video editing skills are. I don't really put any effort into the editing on this channel. But yeah, that's one skill I have that I'm at least pretty good at. I'm good at programming, writing code, or at least I'm decent at it. Someone probably could get a master's degree in computer science without actually ever being good at coding. But in my case, I actually am decent at it. And what else? I can juggle. Easy peasy, I can juggle. I mean, I can juggle 3 things, but I'm really good at that. I can juggle, you give me like 3 apples or 3 oranges or whatever, I can juggle all day. Easy, I can juggle all day. It's not really that impressive, I guess, since I can only do 3. If you throw another thing, like I could juggle 3 lemons all day, but 4 lemons I don't even really know how to do that. But that's something. That's a skill. And let's see what else. I'm out of practice now, but I used to be really good at hacky sack. I learned how to do it to try to make friends since a lot of people at my high school used to do it, but it didn't work out for me, obviously. I did get really good at it, and I joined in a couple of hack circles at school back in the day, and people did notice that I was pretty good at it, but it's not like any girls cared. Girls don't even hacky sack anyway, so that obviously was never going to work. But yeah, I'm pretty good at that, pretty good at hacky sack. I was probably top 10% in lifting weights back in the day when I used to do it. I could bench press 300 pounds and deadlift like, I think my best was 420. So, I know those aren't like super high numbers, but that's probably still top 10% if you consider everybody that lifts weights. And that's something that I did do in public all the time around dozens of yoga pantsed gym floozies. And not once, not even one time, did my bench pressing skills ever get me noticed by any of those harlots. Not once. Because that's not enough to be impressive. You have to be at least elite level these days for your talents to get you any recognition. So I just can't help but laugh when I see someone in my comment section or somebody on Reddit or something like that talking about, you just got to focus on yourself. You just got to develop skills, bro. Get good at something and people will notice. Well, no, that's not how it works. Okay, that's just not true. Maybe if you're good looking, or I guess I could see if you're like borderline attractive, in that case, maybe being really good at something could help push you over the edge of ascension. But in my experience as a guy that's not attractive, that does have some skills, it doesn't help. It hasn't really impacted my life at all. It hasn't even helped me get a job. That's how messed up this is, okay? Being skilled at programming has not even helped me get a job at programming. Maybe it's just the timing. You could make that argument because I know the job market for programming is in the gutter right now, but I got good at programming, a supposedly high-value skill, and I even got a master's degree in computer science, and that was just essentially a waste of time. I mean, maybe it was good for my brain to practice solving problems all the time or whatever, just to keep me from deteriorating even worse than I already have, but it didn't get me a job. It obviously hasn't helped me impress any women. Not that I ever thought writing code is going to impress women. I mean, obviously, I know that's not the case. But you'd think it might help me get a job. But nope. It hasn't. Hasn't helped at all. But yeah, the whole thing people say about developing skills, women like men with skills, it is true in a sense, but only if you're already good looking. Like, imagine if DBDR was a 7 out of 10. I don't know what he actually looks like, but I'll just take his word for it that he's sub 5. But just imagine if he was 7 out of 10 in terms of looks. With his talent in music production, if he was good looking, he'd probably have a huge social media following just based off of his music. And he'd have an inbox full of messages from niche femcel groupies just begging him to meet up. But skills only matter if you're already attractive. So DBDR's talents in music production doesn't help him with women because they just don't care. He's already below the threshold of looks to where he's invisible to women. So no matter how talented he is at music production or anything else, they don't care. He's already invisible to women. So they're not going to notice. and they're not going to care even if they do notice because he's too ugly. And the other thing too is you just look like a joke being good at something when you're ugly. Unless you're elite. You know, LeBron James would probably still be able to get any woman he wants, even if he was sub-5, just because he's literally one of, if not the best in the world at what he does. And it is, you know, basketball. It is a skill that is considered highly attractive. But imagine a sub-5 guy just being pretty good at basketball, you know, not elite, but pretty good. Girls will look at him like he's a joke. They'll just be like, who does he think he is? What, does he think he's going to the NBA or something? What a loser. Because the way they see it, especially girls that are really into guys that do a certain sport, and let's stick with basketball for the sake of this example. If you are sub-5, okay, so if you're an unattractive man and you play basketball, and let's say you're pretty good at it, maybe you were a starter on your high school team back in the day, but you weren't quite good enough to play at the collegiate level. Women see you and they get offended. They get offended like you're some kind of imposter, like you're just a hideous monster that's trying to infiltrate the Chad activity of basketball. Even if you're at the local rec center every weekend just breaking everybody's ankles, putting up a triple-double performance every time you play a game of pickup, women will just see you as an imposter. They could even witness you in person demolishing their Chad boyfriend one-on-one, but they just think, oh, he just got lucky. Chad was just off his game today. That Uggo just got lucky. Being good at something does not move the needle for sub-5 men. Only elite level talent will get you a positive impression. And even then, you know, if you're unattractive enough, even being elite level might not even be enough. So, yeah, definitely don't give up any of your hobbies if it's something you enjoy doing. If it helps you pass the time and you have fun doing it, then might as well keep at it. Okay, I'm not telling you to just give up on something you enjoy, but don't expect women to be impressed by it. Don't expect anybody to be impressed unless maybe you get to the elite top 1% at something globally. And even then, it's only seen as impressive if it's something people care about. Like, nobody's going to care if you're top 1% at juggling while riding a unicycle. Everybody will just think you're a clown. Or, well, I mean, in that case, they'd probably be right. That is literally actually a clown activity. But I think you get what I'm trying to say. You know, if it's a activity or a hobby that is not seen as desirable or not seen as a cool activity, like baseball or guitar or skateboarding, you know, nobody's going to care. Nobody cares about yo-yo. Nobody cares about juggling. Those are skills, those are talents, but just nobody cares, even if you're really, 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 really good at it. But yeah, that's all I got for today. It sucks, like it really sucks to work really hard at something just for it to not pay off whatsoever, but hey, what are you gonna do? That's the world we live in. So if you like this video, I would appreciate it if you would click like or subscribe or try watching some of my other videos. And yeah, thanks for watching.